You're watching TelecomTV from the Red Hat NFV event in Barcelona. And I'm joined now by Chris Wright, who is VP and Chief Technologist at Red Hat. Chris, thanks for joining us again on TelecomTV. How does Red Hat work with telcos to help them with NFV and their network transformation?
Well, our focus is, first of all, on really providing the NFV platform. And that could come in a couple of different relationship models with the actual end customer. In some cases, we work very directly with the customer. And in many cases, we work indirectly through some kind of a systems integrator or network equipment partner, where we combine our NFV platform with either hardware or other NFV components like VNFs to provide a more comprehensive solution. So it really depends on the customer. Some of the larger tier 1 operators are really interested in a very disaggregated model. So they're procuring hardware independently of each of the different software layers. And in that environment, we might work more directly with that customer. And some of the smaller tier 2s are really looking for something that's more bundled and kind of turnkey. So it depends.
We've been hearing from some of the tier 1 telcos that it's not as easy as we may have thought about bringing NFV into commercial deployment. There's a lot of issues involved here. Is this basically the reality of NFV, or is it just an interim phase and in a year or so's time we'll get these issues ironed out?
Well, it's a little both. I mean, the reality is we are creating complex systems. These are large distributed systems. The more components you have, the more interoperability concerns you have if you're bringing together solutions from different vendors. So historically you had physical appliances, typically vertically integrated with control portions of the stack. And as you pull these pieces apart and put them back together, potentially with different vendors involved, there's always interoperability concerns to begin with. And then we're also building a new platform. So we're virtualizing functions, moving them out of physical hardware into a virtual machine, and the performance characteristics are different. So we also have to do this kind of testing and SLA understanding so that we can put things into production and be confident that they're actually going to work the way everybody's expecting them to. So it's more complicated. I think it's also just there's a transition phase in any big change in the industry. So you get the early days and it's filled with hype and everybody's excited we're going to be there quickly and it's going to be painless and rainbows and unicorns. And then there's that sort of trough of disillusionment when you start to realize that it actually is a significant set of changes, and the POCs and the greenfield environments showed us something that was valuable, but integrating with the existing legacy infrastructure is a whole different set, brings a whole different set of challenges. So I think we're kind of in this, we've understood what the promise is. We've started to put things into production, which I think is a really important thing to underscore, as we're seeing real live production environments running customer traffic through VNFs. But it's still early, and we're learning how to automate more appropriately, and it's I think another kind of challenge is that it's not just transforming a piece of the puzzle, it's really together a broad ecosystem all moving together. And so we have new platforms, we have moving network functions from physical to virtual, we have integration into the orchestration layers, and all of that takes time and it takes some collaboration. So a lot of the effort that we've been participating in is in open source communities because it's a perfect place to bring people together. It's not necessarily the traditional standards model, but we can actually work on code together and try things and see what really does work.
So how do we get telcos out of this trough of disillusionment? Well,
it certainly starts with building the right platform, and I think we're pretty close. I mean, we've spent a lot of time on refining OpenStack and the layers even below that to support the service provider network packet processing requirements. So we're feeling pretty confident there. As you move up the stack, there's more work to do, and the very next hop in this stack is the VNFs themselves. And we're working with some of our VNF vendor partners to help them sort of change as they move from a physical appliance to a virtual appliance. That's sort of what I call a naive shift. And what we're really trying to do is get to a more cloud-native style application, which includes decomposing the functionality inside the network function into pieces that can be independently managed and scaled. And that's something that helps realize the real benefit that we're building with this platform. And then I think a layer that the industry initially didn't focus nearly as much on, and it's really come into focus in the last year or so, is the management and orchestration layer. And initially, I think everybody felt like, wait, we're making big changes in the platform, we're bringing vendors onto this virtualized platform, moving their functions from physical to virtual, and we can work within the existing ecosystem of orchestration solutions. And I think what we're seeing now is a really strong push from the service providers to bring open source software to that layer as well.
So this isn't NFV itself, is this something that sits above and outside of NFV?
That's right. It's often called a management and orchestration layer, or MANO, in the ETSI NFV architecture diagram. And so it's sort of sitting on top. It's the thing that's really kind of controlling where you actually deploy all of the services into individual virtualization platforms, and ultimately down to compute nodes, and tying those to the real low-level hardware infrastructure that's at the very bottom.
Is there a danger at times we place too much emphasis as an industry on NFV or on SDN, and really these are just technology enablers, and what we should be focusing on is the end goal of service providers, which is delivering services that their customers need and require?
Well, the clear goal for the service providers is improving the speed at which they can just change and adapt to their customers' requirements and needs, and sort of, I think of it in two ways. One is respond to market opportunities, and the other is respond to market threats. And in order to kind of give them the tools they need, we're building NFV and SDN as technology components, but we don't want to forget that there is a bigger picture here. And the bigger picture is helping the service providers really bring quick change into their networks that responds quickly to customer demand.
Chris, thanks very much indeed.